Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I hate to kick off the program with sad news, but I wanted to mention this to you. A friend of Frankly Speaking has passed away. If you recall, back in July of 2023, I had the honor of interviewing Tuskegee Airman Lieutenant Herbert Thorpe. He was 100 years old. It was a wonderful interview. We had a great conversation, which I plan on playing next week. We are booked up this week, but in tribute, I will rebroadcast that interview next week, and I'll keep you updated. For those of you who are maybe newer to the program and missed what was just a real honor. Lieutenant Thorpe has won such things as a U.S. Congressional Gold Medal and has a building named for him at the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory in Rome, New York. And that was around the time that we interviewed him. Beloved community champion, cultural trailblazer, civil rights advocate, and former Tuskegee Airman Herbert C. Thorpe succumbed this world peacefully in the early hours of Sunday, January 28, 2024 at Rome Memorial Hospital. I wanted to put up the picture of him that we showed at the time receiving that award, and also cherished possession here that I have that I look at in the morning when I'm getting ready, because it's in my desk, my autographed program from that event. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Lieutenant Herbert Thorpe, and I wanted to mention that to you because I know we have fans that have been watching from the beginning, and that was one of the interviews that I've heard the most about early on. We were only a couple months in, so I really appreciated Michael Joseph setting that up for me and making it possible for me to have that honor to interview him. Okay, we have a lot to talk about this morning. A little bit later on in the program, we're going to hear from Amy Jesse from Casa Trinity in Elmira. I know a lot of times we talk about veterans services and how we can help our veterans with mental health, addictions. And I thought, here we are at the beginning of the new year, and I thought, maybe there's people out there that want to hear who aren't veterans how they can overcome and break addiction. So that's going to be coming up here in just a little bit. We did receive some messages yesterday after the program that I wanted to highlight to you. We do have some New York State issues. We're going to talk about the president's decision, which we do not know a lot about. The decision, how to retaliate. He said he has made that decision, but again, will not say what that is. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Just turning that up just a little bit. Okay. Yesterday, I received this message. That was the fastest show yet. Yeah, I know every morning it seems like we cover so much. I like this one from a viewer. I really like your show because it tells many of the news that you don't hear on mainstream parrot programs. They seem to operate as if they are all under the same director, but with different actors. Well, thank you for that. I do think we have kind of a unique set of stories sometimes. Sometimes it's in line with other outlets, but a lot of times I think you're getting a little bit of everything, which is actually going to happen in our next segment, which is an update on Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard and what is happening there. We received a press release yesterday, or a media release, and then a few things here about Governor Hochul's decision to cut CHIPS funding. That's for road and highway repair and replacement. We're going to talk about that in just a moment as well. Couple quick updates before we go. Again, we're going to be talking to Amy a little bit later on. On Friday, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will be joining us, so don't miss that. I know Phil's a favorite. He's going to be joining us to talk about what's going on in Albany, so that's going to fill the whole show, so do not miss that. Mark your calendar for Friday. So again, saddened to hear about our friend Lieutenant Thorpe passing away on Sunday. Again, our thoughts and prayers go out to him, to his family, and to his friends and so many people's lives that he touched through the years. 101 years old. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. our beautiful view of Market Street here in Corning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us. Update from what is happening in Steuben County and the Sheriff's Office. I know this gets, when I read this, it gets a little confusing at times because we've had a lot of discussions on this, but I think this part is worth updating, and I'll try to, as we go along here, maybe refresh your memory as much as I can on what we're discussing here. But Steuben County's attorneys, so this is the county's attorneys, are attempting to appeal a Supreme Court justice's order to depose a county legislator in connection with the Steuben County Sheriff's ongoing action against the county over a resolution that would strip the sheriff of protection against lawsuits for actions taken in the course of his office duties. So what my understanding is, they were going to ask for someone, a county legislator, to fill in what happened behind closed doors, because as you recall, this was not open to the public. It was not even, I believe, put on the agenda until very last moment. So a lot of people were wondering why so much secrecy, everything done in executive session. Well, the late Friday filing came after a Steuben County Supreme Court heard arguments on January the 4th on the sheriff's request, which the county opposed. The county did not want members hearing, or people hearing from this county legislator about what was going on behind closed doors. And I'll continue. To take testimony, this is the part, from a Steuben County legislator about the discussion and debate that was held over Resolution 183-23. The resolution, which passed on September 25th, 2023, would take away the sheriff's identification, legal protection given to other county officers, and leave him exposed to lawsuits for performing his office, or his official duties, The resolution was enjoined, stopped from taking effect, by a court several days after it was passed. It remains enjoined today. Yes, as I said, it gets a little confusing. If you're not a lawyer, there's a lot of legalese here. Hopefully you watched Perry Mason yesterday and you got some of these terms. On January 22nd, the court issued an order allowing a legislator to be deposed under oath, finding that the deposition, quote, is material and necessary to establish whether the county acted in bad faith regarding the executive session held and subsequent passage by the Steuben County legislator of Steuben County, Resolution 183-23. So again, to boil that down, basically saying they want to hear what was going on behind closed doors. If the legislators were told the information that was necessary to vote for this, or if it was done in bad faith, maybe things told inaccurately, or whatever the case may be. In requesting permission to appeal the court's order, the county did not explain why it thought the order was wrong, but noted that the filing stayed the order, preventing the sheriff's office from taking the legislator's testimony. So it stopped that from happening. The county's attempt to appeal its loss extends the ongoing dispute, which began when the county passed two unprecedented resolutions aimed at stripping the sheriff's liability protections under the public office law. And at the time, and we've had the sheriff on numerous times since this first occurred, but I would say, from what I've heard from people, the most anger came from the lack of information to the public and going against somebody that, as a sheriff, is voted on by the people, by you and me if you're a Steuben County resident. And I guess what this all boils down to is think of the extra cost associated with this. But I'll continue because we're running late. You remember the protections. But although the county's request to appeal prolongs the legal fight and the use of taxpayer monies to continue it, Steuben County residents should remain assured that the sheriff and the men and women of the sheriff's office continue to carry out the full range of their responsibilities and duties in service of their public safety mission. For more information, you can go to the Steuben County Sheriff's Office to find out more about their activities and the community programs and duties, and follow them on Facebook. So thank you to the Sheriff's Office for sending that along. We'll try to have Sheriff Allard on again here soon. Okay, we're running just a little late. I'm going to take this break. We're going to talk a little bit quickly about a New York State issue, and then we'll take another break and talk with Amy Jesse from Casa Trinity. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. We're moving fast, I know. Okay, let me take a breather, and we'll be right back after this. And we are back. with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. One quick update. We've been talking about the governor and some of the proposed cuts she's making. We last week discussed school funding. Now it's time to discuss CHIPS funding. Now that is state funding that local governments rely on. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, who will join us on Friday, has spoke for CHIPS. They have these amazing, I don't know if you call them rallies in Albany with our highway repairmen. But it relies on road and highway repair, the local governments do, for repair and replacement of CHIPS funding. Excuse me. So I wanted to pass on this quote from Mayor Buckley, Hornell Mayor John Buckley, who was on the program just what was it last week? Time flies. We have so many guests on this program, but this is what he had to say. As I stated in my State of the City address, local governments have made progress in recent years, receiving increases in funding related to roads and highways. However, those increases have been and continue to be eroded by inflation. Now, the governor has proposed a $60 million cut in CHIPS funding in the executive budget. Yeah, and this is an important note, and good for Mayor Buckley for bringing this up. Yeah, has announced an astounding $2.4 billion to be sent to New York City to deal with the massive influx of migrants. If the state of New York can afford to spend billions on non-citizens, at the very least, it can surely maintain current levels of funding for repair and replacement of our roads and highways. Road and highway funding programs such as CHIPS, Pave New York, Winter Recovery, and Pave Our Potholes should be increased annually to keep up with inflation. Cutting crucial funding streams such as these adds more pressure to local governments and is an insult to residents. And it is a good point. And you think of the safety aspect. I know Assemblyman Palmisano brings it up frequently. But, I mean, you think of the school buses going over these bridges and these roads. You think of your travel with your family on these roads. So, yes, I think we're going to see a lot of frustration as we learn more about what's cut, and then the money again going to migrants in New York City. So I wanted to pass that along to you before we go to our break. I know we're covering a lot of different topics this morning. We're going to go to the national level when we come back from our guest. Amy from Casa Trinity is going to join us. Get those comments coming in. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. It is going to be a good show for you to watch this morning, just because I know we're going to be busy and we're going to cover so much that you may not find elsewhere, like to that viewer's comment that I read earlier. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me from Casa Trinity, Amy, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad that you could come on the show, because we've been talking with a lot of people that help veterans get the services that they need after they've obviously got out of very terrible situations. And a lot of it is drug, a lot of it is mental. But I thought, we have a lot of people that watch the show that aren't veterans that could use help. And especially at the beginning of the year, a lot of people think more about that type of thing. So could you tell us a little about Casa Trinity and what the services are that you offer?
Yeah, so Casa Trinity has been around for almost 50 years. We're coming up on that anniversary this year.
Wow.
And what started with just treatment and prevention services for substance use disorders is now turned into prevention education in 5 counties. We have treatment services for substance use disorders and also mental health concerns. We have recovery and outreach programs that help people that are working towards the recovery or in recovery, and then having that kind of shared experience, camaraderie, activities in recovery, that kind of stuff. So there's many levels to it in how we offer services and many sectors under that. But essentially it's just about getting people help that they need or want to have in regards to making their lifestyles healthier.
I think one of the things that's a misconception for myself and a lot of viewers, addiction affects everyone, right? It's not just, you kind of think of maybe a stereotype of an addict or something you see in a movie, but it could be your neighbor, it could be someone at the grocery store.
There's so many variables to it, and you're totally right in regards to this in the box perception of what somebody in active addiction may look like or be like in those ways, but it's not always the case.
Right.
And one of the things that we strive to tell people is we're a form of healthcare.
Yeah.
If you have a concern, or if something's becoming risky or concerning to you as far as how you're coping with things or dealing with things, or you're turning to a substance, whether it be, a harsher drug or alcohol in that way, when it starts to get concerning, that's when we're here to help with that.
Right.
So we kind of look at it in that wellness factor for people across the grid. We want to try to be proactive and help prevent some of those things. We want to help treat some of the concerns and give you some tools to better handle those situations.
That's such a good point, because you would always seek professional help if you needed it for a health reason, right? So how is this any different? Do you think that's going back to what I was saying about kind of the stereotype of someone dealing with this? Do you think the biggest hurdle, because this is what our veterans groups always say, the biggest hurdle is overcoming the stigma?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's for a lot of people. I would especially imagine with veterans too, because
Sure.
you kind of have that,
A tough exterior, right? Yeah.
And listen, for anybody, asking for help is not an easy thing.
No.
Especially when you know you need it, and not knowing where to turn or who to reach out to in that way, because sometimes it can't be your family. Sometimes you truly need another kind of pillar of that, and that's where we come into that. If you know you need help and you want to be able to make a change in your life, we're there to help open the door and make the weight of that a little bit easier. It is a two-way street, so if you are looking to make these changes, there's a work that's got to be done,
Right.
And it's our team is there to help with that, and it's not gonna be linear, and it's not gonna be easy,
Right.
but it's going to get easier as you get through some of that.
Yeah. Is it an easy process to begin with? Now, I don't mean what you're saying, going through it, but if someone's watching this right now and they say, I want to start the process with CASA, how easy is that?
You just give us a call.
Really?
Yeah, we'll do an evaluation with them in person, and really kind of see what the level of care is that they need in that regard.
Yeah.
We have outpatient, we have inpatient, we have residential services, and each of those levels of care are to meet different needs based off of what is necessary. But it's not even just substance use disorders now. We also help with mental health, and
Right.
we have 2 mental health clinics, one in Elmira that recently opened and one in Geneseo. And so whether it's co-occurring and you're seeking services at both locations, or it's just one or the other, regardless, we're going to help you through it.
Yeah. And I think one thing and I was looking at your website and talking with others about this interview, I think it's important to note too that this directly affects individuals, but it's also their families, and it's maybe people that you don't think in their friend groups, work groups. That's kind of a heartbreaking aspect to it.
It's a balancing act of dynamics in that way, because you're seeing a loved one go through a hard time.
Right.
And sometimes there's nothing that you can do. It really, until the person is ready to get help and make a change, unfortunately, the only thing I can lend to families is being supportive of what that person's trying to do.
Right.
But it's so hard for families. So we have various different things too that help with even family support in the aspect, in different group sessions, or sometimes our prevention teams get involved with some of that too, just for the home life part of it.
Right.
And so families don't feel like they're alone in the heavy part of it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Did you find that, in your experience, COVID really had to increase the need for your service?
Yes.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it just only makes sense.
No, it definitely did. It impacted for sure. Anybody that is, facing these speed bumps and also trying to either work on the recovery or are in active addiction and really struggling, COVID was a really, really hard hit in those ways, because it created a lot of isolation for people. And especially for those in recovery, connection and getting in to see people and that kind of aspect. Telehealth is really, really great for certain needs of things, but you don't get that
One-on-one.
in-person interaction. And so it definitely made us pivot a lot of different ways to try and we could host, certain group things outside,
Right.
and still be able to do things in a way that created connection in some format. It definitely made a ripple effect.
Well, kind of to that point, and you had mentioned it, I think it's interesting that some of the people that have been through recovery go back and join with you guys to help,
Yeah.
because that's got to be another really hurdle for someone. How can this person relate to me, as I'm going through this, or how can that, but this person 100% can relate to you.
Yeah. So in our all of our outpatient and any of our locations, truly, we have peers on staff. Peer recovery specialists are there as part of the treatment plan at any level of care. And what they do is they're the person that's in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
They have been through a program, whether it's ours or another treatment center in that way. And they've come through the other side and are living in active recovery now.
Mm-hmm.
And they found their purpose to help others.
Yeah.
So they now work for us and they get credentialed and they go through all the trainings to help and do those things, to where you come in for a treatment service,
Right.
you have somebody that's there that has been in your shoes, can at least know some of the struggles you're going
course.
through,
Mm-hmm.
and give you some of the tools from that perspective to get through it and move forward.
Now, you have an amazing staff that works there at CASA. What's it?
That means a lot.
Yes. Well, what does it feel like for having such dedicated employees, if that's even the right word? It might not even be the word, but dedicated employees when they see somebody making this journey, and maybe I don't know if there's the
exciting.
ever end to that journey, right? But
Yeah.
get to see that success.
Well, it's so it makes all of the things that you've experienced with that person during their path, it just takes
Yeah.
it to a whole nother level of flourishing and thriving.
Right.
Because it's a you rise, I rise, we rise situation
Yeah.
and treatment plan. So you're working one-on-one with somebody, and they're doing the work, and they're finding out new things about themselves, and they're really trying to get there.
Yeah.
And then they get there, and it's just so exciting to see for the person.
Just
because-
rewarding, right?
Yeah. And so I think that it's like in any format of work in that way, when you're, especially human services, where sometimes it's really, really hard and
I'm
it's
sure.
really heavy sometimes. But you see people come through the other side, and it just takes it to another level of why we do what we do.
Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. We're being joined again by Amy. Amy, congratulations. You got a big ribbon cutting coming up.
We do.
Tell me all about it.
So we have a mental health clinic that we recently opened in Elmira.
Okay.
It's separate from our outpatient substance use disorder clinic. So you can be a client of that and also come to mental health, or you can just come in for mental health services. And that is located at 244 West Water Street in the BKA Financial Building.
Okay.
So that is open to anybody that is looking to get some help with some mental health concerns they might have.
And then on February 7th, they can tour. People can tour if they want to see the location. You also have speakers and the fun of a ribbon cutting, right?
Yeah, it's exciting.
So
Gonna
between
celebrate
this
it.
ribbon cutting, everything else you've mentioned so far, the 50th anniversary, it must be a very busy time at CASA. Is there any free time, any time to rest?
No.
No, okay. I didn't think so. Okay,
We do
perfect.
what we can when we can.
Well, and I say that jokingly because you guys do such amazing work, and we were talking, think of how many locations you've mentioned just in this interview. So the best place for people to find, because I don't want you to read a map off, the best place is probably go to the website,
The
right?
website is the best. It tells everything that we do and breaks it down in the way that isn't overwhelming to the
Right.
community, I guess.
It is a, well, it
So we
is a
do so
very
many
nice
different
website.
things. Thank you.
Because I was looking at it and I thought you offer so many things that it could be one of those things you get lost on a rabbit hole
Yeah.
and not know where you ended up.
Yeah.
So it's a very impressive website, and that's where people can find the location, but just find out more in general, right?
Yeah.
Now, what if someone is watching this and they say, well, I don't need the help that CASA delivers to the people, but I would like to help. I would like to be a part of the amazing work that you do. What should they do?
Online also talks about volunteer opportunities. So that's a way that they can get involved with either events that we have throughout the year, which can span from coalition, getting involved with that kind of stuff, or even like our annual 5K event.
Oh, okay. Well, speaking of that, just before we go, because we're out of time, in the future, let's have you back on the show and you can tell us about these events and all the things you have coming up, because it sounds like there's enough that we can do probably once a week. No, but next time you have something big, let's have you on, okay?
Okay. sounds
Thanks so
great.
much for
Thanks.
doing this.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Thank you so much for joining us here on Frankly Speaking. on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Just interesting before we get into some more of the nitty gritty, and we have a lot of time to work with, so please feel free to send your comments in. Gen Z, as voters, may sit out on the 2024 presidential election. According to Ricky Schlott at the New York Post, who is a Gen Z himself, took a look at some of the numbers here and saying the percentage of young Americans planning to vote in 2024 is down 8% from the last presidential election cycle. I don't think it's because they've gotten lazier. I think it's because they're more disillusioned than ever. And he has a point here. He says, as a member of Gen Z, I commiserate with young people who might be thinking it's simply not worth the bother anymore. Imagine if the first ballot you cast was in 2016 or in 2020. Imagine if every election cycle you can really remember. That's weird. You can really remember what caused friends to block each other on social media, family members to cut ties, and Americans to view their fellow citizens as evil. And it has only grown. I know I've talked about it on this program a lot, but the fact that, well, I think it's tragic to let politics, break up a family, for instance. But anyway, of course, not voting is not the solution, and it's surely not the route I'll personally be taking in 2024. It's our civic duty to cast a ballot, even for a writing candidate, if we don't like the choices before us. But I do understand why some young folks who only remember elections that tore the country's social fabric apart might simply be checking out, especially as it doesn't seem either Trump or Biden is doing much to win their support back. There's perhaps nothing more corrosive to our country's future than a jaded and unenthusiastic youth, and unfortunately, it's understandable why they're feeling that way. Kind of an interesting point, and one I'd like to have you weigh in on. But let's get into it. Biden said he has decided how he's going to respond to that attack in Jordan. Asked by CNN whether he has decided how to respond, Biden said yes, but declined to provide further details. The president reiterated that he's hoping to deter a broader conflict in the Middle East, saying on Tuesday, as he prepared to depart for a fundraiser, quote, I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That's not what I'm looking for. So we don't know what that plan is. Now, according to ABC News, they're suggesting that the U.S. is readying strikes. What it says here is, and again, this is from ABC News, the U.S. response to a drone attack that killed 3 American service members in Jordan last weekend will be carried out, quote, over the course of several days and striking, quote, multiple targets, a U.S. official told ABC News. These are going to be very deliberate targets, deliberate strikes on facilities that enabled these attacks on U.S. forces, said the official, who, of course, wanted to speak on the condition of anonymity. Officials would not say whether any of the targets would be inside or outside Iran. So there's a quick update. Now, Russia and China, according to the Daily Mail, Russia and China are sending a warning against a cycle of retaliation, warning the president, let's not go down that path. This is troubling when you have Russia and China, allies with Iran, giving us a little bit of a, hey, don't go too far. Don't get into this cycle of retaliation. Russia and China have rushed to the defense of their ally Iran and urged the United States to show restraint in its response to the killing of 3 American soldiers. Boy, and this comes off the back. And I know we talked about this a lot, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the real threat of China that I think for years, because of money, has been overlooked or ignored by so many politicians. FBI Director Chris Wray. This was on Wednesday, so this was yesterday. I'm sorry. Today's Wednesday, isn't it? Yeah, today's Wednesday. So this is what he's expected to say. Excuse me. China's hackers are positioning on American infrastructure in preparation to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to American citizens and communities. If or when China decides the time has come to strike, Wray said. Now, this goes really on the back of what we've talked about so often on this program, the real threat, and on so many different levels. Maybe not what we would think of as a typical war if China wanted to go that direction. But what's going to happen is, as we signal weakness time and time again, and who knows what the retaliation for Jordan will look like. We can't speculate on that yet. But we've talked about Afghanistan and the withdrawal there, what that many people believe led to, of course, Russia invading Ukraine, and then you have the October 7th attack in Israel. And so what if China decides to take back, as they put it, Taiwan, to go after and try to take Taiwan? What would we as a country do? And if China has this, hey, they're saying don't go too extreme on your retaliation in Jordan, telling us that because of their ally Iran. What were to happen if FBI Director Christopher Wray is right, that they have hackers that are positioned on American infrastructure that would wreak havoc and cause real world harm to American citizens and communities if, keep this in mind, when he says if or when China decides the time has come to strike. The word terrified and terrifying is perhaps overused, but this is something that if you've been with us for a long period of time on this program, you know we've had these discussions almost since day one about the real threat of China that so many in Washington have not taken seriously due to financial interests. So I'm not trying to scare you this morning. Just wanted to pass that along to you. There is a piece that we won't have time to get to this morning from the New York Post by Rebecca Hinrichs. Biden's disastrous approach to foreign policy culminated in the Jordan attack that killed U.S. soldiers. And we've talked about some of those decisions in the past that the president has made when it comes to foreign policy. And we mentioned yesterday on the program the quote that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's been wrong on almost every decision he's ever made on foreign policy throughout his whole career. That's not as president, but as vice president and in his time in the Senate. And that's coming from a former Obama official. Now, we're going to get to other topics here. How am I doing? I'm doing good. If you're not aware, the House panel did approve the impeachment articles against DHS Secretary Mayorkas. We've talked about this the last couple days. The House Homeland Security Committee voted 18-15 along party lines for the 2 articles of impeachment, affirming that Mayorkas failed to detain migrants crossing the border before deciding whether to grant asylum. The articles also state that the secretary ignored record requests from the committee and misled Congress about having operational control of the U.S. border and maintaining that it is, quote, secure. The marathon hearing, and it's so interesting to see, you know, people's attention spans or memories are short sometimes, but to see some of the comments being made by people that were so aggressive in impeaching the former President Trump so many times, now saying that this is just a political impeachment. But the marathon hearing, which dragged on for more than 15 hours, saw several procedural attempts by Democrats to tank the impeachment effort, with Republicans insisting that their year-long investigation had uncovered sufficient evidence that Mayorkas violated his oath of office. House Speaker Mike Johnson pledged on Friday to hold a floor vote on the articles as soon as possible. And some of the quote, do I have them right here, or is it the next piece before we go to break? Here it is. First of all, Representative Clay Higgins, I think, had a good point. My colleagues across the aisle seem to say that it is acceptable that we've had 10 million illegal crossings in 3 years, and we've had pushing 300,000 American dead from opioid overdose. We're losing our country down there, and the man responsible for executing that policy is Mayorkas. But on the other side of the aisle, Democrats push back, calling it a sham impeachment. The extreme MAGA Republicans who are running the House of Representatives are deeply unserious people. They don't want progress. They don't want solutions, said Benny Thompson, ranking member. They want a political issue, and most of all, they want to please their disgraced former president. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, if you've ever have a chance, and I can't remember who did the expose on her, the way she treats her staff is just, I don't know how anybody could work there. I don't know how there isn't toxic work environment charges brought up, but she said impeachment is not meant as a tool to be used for revenge. Well, she got instant pushback on that. Aaron Ray Herms, a Texas Republican who's running against her, said, oh, so wanting to protect the country is just revenge now? Then why did you impeach Trump for making a perfectly valid phone call in 2019? Keep lying and we'll keep showing up with receipts. Can't wait to take your seat. Others posting, did you post this comment when you did the revenge impeachment of Trump, etc.? So the back and forth on this. Now, there is a piece, an article, and we do have to take a break, that is suggesting when we talk about the border that because there's the negotiations going on now with securing the border, that because Republicans are asking for certain things, the Democrats don't want to give it to them, that Democrats are now going to run on being pro-border security. It's really, it's from CNN, so, be ready for it. Democrats lean in on border security as Republicans scuttle the deal. One Democrat strategist said Democrats have an opportunity to go on the offensive here. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Earlier on, if you're just joining us, we had Amy from Casa Trinity, and I received a nice message here. Thanks for the interview and website for Casa Trinity. Just sent it to a friend in need of the service. The interview timing was perfect. Well, I'm glad, and that's why I thought it was important to have Amy on, because we do talk about it, excuse me, with veterans, and I'm proud of that. We've had a lot of conversations on that in the past on this program. But I thought, for those of us that aren't veterans, that maybe you out there, a viewer, could pass it along if that's something that was interesting to you. So I appreciate that. Next, not sure if you're aware that the RNC is in trouble for management crazy spending. They're running low on funds. It's like they have been taken over by the Democrats. Yeah, I did hear a little bit about that with the money trouble. That should not be the case, because what did I see? Hakeem Jeffries raised a lot of money for House Democrats. A lot. So I hope that we're prepared. Finally, distrust in politics. This is in reference to Generation Z, not liking really either candidate, not believing that either candidate speaks for them, and just not interested in going to vote. Distrust, and I think the person who wrote that piece has a good point, that it's not even necessarily maybe about the candidates, that they're young, maybe the first time voting was 2020, and they saw how it tore apart families and friendships, people spewing hate on their social media. And remember, they're still young people, that things like that really, really hurt. And that's not just young people. A lot of people get hurt by social media. But they saw that and said, is it even worth it? But I'll continue. Distrust in politics and our voting system destroys nationalism. According to Klaus Schwab in his book, The Death of Nationalism, The Death of Nationalism is necessary to usher in globalism. So this voting apathy is a step towards true globalization. Can you blame them with the scandals these candidates bring to the table, meaning these young people? I wouldn't let any of these people hold my purse. Thank you very much for those comments. Keep them coming in. I always appreciate the back and forth. And I also appreciate, too, this happens every once in a while, where we have a great back and forth, maybe a difference of opinion. And I really do appreciate that. So if you're new to the program, you see the number on the bottom of your screen, feel free to text or leave a voicemail at any time. So I mentioned Democrats are going to lean in on border security. They believe that they can somehow win this debate, which, again, going back to the point I made earlier about attention spans, will people forget what's been going on for the last nearly 4 years? I mean, the day one, Joe Biden, with a pen, got rid of the executive orders of Trump that has led to the open porous border. But I quote the one Democrat strategist, according to CNN, Democrats have an opportunity to go on the offensive here. Democrats are doing what 3 months ago might have seemed unthinkable for the party in an election year, preparing to go on offense on border security. And many of you astute viewers who watch a lot of news or read a lot of coverage, you may have seen that that's already the case. There's numerous examples to it. Representative Debbie Dingell, the Michigan Democrat, said, it's the closest we've come in decades, and they're rejecting it, so they can't blame us, meaning this border security bill. And they're and showing it's a political issue. They say they aren't going to waste it, meaning this opportunity. Last week, Democrat candidate Tom Suozzi, who was running in a special election to replace Santos, essentially crashed a news conference his opponent led on immigration. When they were done, Suozzi held his own gaggle with reporters and offered a rebuttal and an outline of bipartisan solutions to fix the border, something he was heavily involved in when he served in Congress back in 2019. So we may see more of that. That may be another talking point to prepare yourself for. Speaking of immigration, let me take my last break, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up this discussion, go through a couple things very quickly. I know, the show went very quickly, always does, so I guess I'm going to say quickly a lot. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio I'm Frank Acom, and this is Frankly Speaking on Big Fox. Boy, there's a video of cops being beaten. Have you seen this? By rowdy migrant mobs near Times Square. So this is on two levels as we talk about immigration, we talk about the border. But cops, and this is in New York City, allegedly beaten by rowdy migrant mobs near Times Square, with suspects later freed without bail. There's a lot to dissect in that headline coming from the New York Post. Bail reform, we've talked about it a million times. There's also, and I don't have time to get to it, from the New York Post, Betsy McKay. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is right. America is being invaded. And she said, basically, look what's happened in Finland, Italy, France, Poland, and now, no surprise, America. And what they're saying is that young people that are coming over here, military-aged men who could, and this was a letter sent by 10 top-ranking former FBI officials to Congress. The letter points to the danger of a large number of military-aged men who could begin attacking gatherings of unarmed citizens, duplicating the horrors of the October 7th attack by Hamas. It also warns that some migrants are on the terror watch list or from countries designated state sponsors of terrorism. The left claims it's racist to refer to migration as invasion, but it's nonsense, and this article goes through the history and what we're seeing currently in other countries and what this could mean. The letter to Congress warns an invasion of the homeland is unfolding now. That is, again, by 10 top-ranking former FBI officials. And it says here that the military-aged men from Russia and China pose an alarming threat. If the Biden administration won't do its job to secure our border and keep America safe, said Iowa's Attorney General, it should step aside and let the states do the job for them. Amen, said Betsy McKay, former lieutenant governor here in New York State. Former Biden rival, you will remember this name, Andrew Yang. This is where we jump around on a lot of topics. He says Trump wins if election was held today. Now, keep in mind, Yang is campaigning for Democrat Representative Dean Phillips, who is a primary challenger against President Biden, though not putting up stunning numbers. There are a lot of voters who are quite negative about Joe Biden, including independents in Wisconsin and Arizona and Georgia and Michigan, who are going to essentially decide the race in November, and that's where our attention should be focused, said Yang. I had some conversations like that in South Carolina over the last couple of days. I want to fast forward because we're almost out of time. The most extreme thing that the DNC has done to stifle democracy is canceling the primaries in Florida and North Carolina and attempting to do so in another state or two. I mean, it's ridiculous to talk about championing democracy on one hand and then literally canceling primaries on the other. So if Democrats want to practice democracy, that would involve having debates. That would involve having genuine competitive primaries. That would involve giving the people a choice. So that's Andrew Yang. Now, maybe the Biden administration's a little scared. Super PAC. Biden's Super PAC called Future Forward plans a historic $250 million ad blitz. It will be the largest single purchase of political advertising by a Super PAC in the nation's history. It's going to be split $140 million on television, $110 million on digital and streaming platforms. And it'll start the day after the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, concludes in August and will run through Election Day. $250 million. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Wow, that went fast. Thank you to Amy from Casa Trinity for being our guest. We'll be back tomorrow morning, starting at 7, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thanks for joining us this morning. We'll see you tomorrow.